looking at a really good looking broccoli trial here, which is being run by Dr. Rebecca Brown at the University of Rhode Island.
Broccoli, of course, is a very popular vegetable. It's actually the most popular in terms of consumption of all of our brassica vegetables. And it is a good cool weather vegetable. And so one of the things that we've been looking at is taking advantage of our generally milder fall weather to produce broccoli for harvest all the way up to ideally Thanksgiving. And so this is actually the second planting date of our fall broccoli trial. Here it is October 9th. We are just doing the first harvest on this trial, and we have a 20-day range in maturity dates under summer conditions for the varieties in this trial. So one of the things we're looking at is what is the range of maturity dates under fall conditions with decreasing light and cooler temperatures. And then we're also looking at factors like tolerance to purpling in response to cold nights, and tolerance to Alternaria, and then just general yield and quality characteristics.
So have you already gone through to do disease ratings?
We have not, because we're just really starting to see any sign of disease in here. It's been such a dry year.
Right. Are there any other pest issues on here? Have you had to deal with a lot of caterpillars?
We actually have not. We sprayed the first planting date, which is over to my right, against caterpillars once. We had cross-striped cabbage worm, but we actually have not sprayed the second planting date at all. One of the things we've actually been measuring is the diameter of the plants themselves. We did that every week for 5 weeks during the vegetative growth stage, with the idea of identifying varieties that have a more upright growth and might be better suited to production systems where you're looking to interseed cover crops with a mechanical interseeding drill. Since the width of the broccoli canopy is a limiting factor on when you can get in there with a drill and interseed.
What is the spacing? I assume there, for the trial, you use the same spacing for all varieties.
Yes, 30 inches between rows, and we went with, I believe, 18 inches between plants.
Okay. And what about, we're still in a drought. We're still in extreme drought conditions.
Yes.
In fact, how are you seeing, do you feel like you're seeing differences between varieties based on water issues, or?
We haven't really looked at that, and we have been irrigating in here. So we've been trying to mitigate the drought somewhat, but when we analyze the yield data, we may well see some of that. This cover crop trial is part of a region-wide study organized by the Northeast Cover Crops Council. And so we have 14 locations from Maryland all the way to northern Vermont. Here at URI, we have 2 fields planted in this mix, and each field serves as a separate experiment site. The mix itself is winter rye, vetch, and a cold hardy winter mustard from Barenbrug. So it's a northern European winter rape sort of variety. And this was seeded on September 1st. What we're looking at is differences in yield and species composition of the mix across all of our different planting locations. 3 weeks after seeding, we came in and established a permanent quadrat in this field. I don't know if you can see it in the picture, but it's where the 4 tall tomato stakes are. And we counted the number of plants of each of the 3 species in the mix within that plot. We will come back in spring of 2021 and harvest the biomass from that plot, separate it out into the component species and also weeds, and record that. And we've also done extensive soil sampling with 8 samples around the perimeter of that permanent quadrat to get a good characterization of the soil within that quadrat. This study is actually designed to be a farmer participatory study, and many of our sites are actually on commercial farms, not here in Rhode Island, but in many of the other states. And the study itself is actually supplemented by a much more extensive trial using the same 3 cover crop seed sources at some of the other research stations where they're looking at different seeding rates and doing an entire yield response curve study. There are some bare patches. We're not entirely sure what's going on there. One issue we had with establishing this trial was the drought situation, and it may be that that's a slightly higher patch and so was slightly drier. But it's also possible that we had some sort of an issue with the Truax drill.
But no, there's no critter eating here going on.
Not any significant critter eating in this field. I mean, there may be a little bit of woodchuck and rabbit feeding, but we're inside the deer fence here, so we don't have any significant deer predation, and I haven't seen any significant tracks in this field.
Now, what about the other field where there's no deer protection?
So the other field is over at the old turf research area. It has no deer protection, and the field over there is full of deer tracks. It has only a fraction of the mustard that is in this field. Even though the seed mix was identical, the planting date was the same. There are, of course, some slight differences in the soils between the 2 fields, but the other interesting thing is that if you look at the field over at turf, there is also a gradient in the density of mustard, with it being higher on the edge closest to the road. And we suspect that what was happening in that field is that the deer were coming in and eating the mustard out of the field as it came up. It won't be a wash because part of the purpose of the study is to look at different sites, but we will definitely get different results than we had in this study, in this field. It'll probably winter over down in Maryland. They expect it probably will not up in northern Vermont. And in between, that's one of the things we're looking at. This is a variety trial. We are looking at 9 different varieties of chard. Compare them for yield, amount of marketable versus unmarketable chard, which is a somewhat indirect measure of disease resistance, and just general performance under these fall conditions. Overlaid on this trial, we actually have a fungicide trial that is looking at managing specifically Cercospora. We have also been seeing a lot of Alternaria in the chard this year, so it'll be interesting to see whether the fungicides are able to manage that as well. This planting was seeded at the end of July, about 5 weeks before the second planting, 5 or 6 weeks. One of the things that we've been doing with this planting since the poor establishment really made it impossible to look at yield is looking a lot more intensively at disease response. And we've had both a lot of Cercospora and a lot of Alternaria in this field. And what I'm standing in right now is the variety Charbel. And this variety has just been a lot more tolerant to both of the diseases than any other entry in this trial. The plants are not immune, and you can certainly see disease on some of the older leaves, but the amount of marketable chard per bunch as a percentage is much higher than for any of the other varieties. This variety is consistently producing greater than 70% marketable, and many of the others are at best 50%. It's also a very pretty variety. It's got much wider petioles than some, but they have this really nice shading from pink through orange to deep red. One of the things I did actually collect data on in this trial was petiole width and also overall leaf length, including the petiole. So we do actually have that data as well as disease ratings. I'm hoping that we'll actually be able to do a second sampling for percent marketable next week, which will help us figure out how much the marketability was affected by the freak frost on the night of the 21st. Despite the weediness of it, because we quit weeding, I have not regretted my decision not to mow it down and plow it under.
All right. Thank you. This has been great.